Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Friday, 5th of October, 2018. And it's a beautiful morning, still air, and well, better than some summer days that we've had over the previous few years. Not this summer, of course, which was truly remarkable. So thank you to everyone who tuned in to the two episodes of Humanity vs. Insanity and Fracking Nightmare last night. We had record live audiences, which might well explain why my email account apparently has been hacked this morning. And it seems that everybody in my email address book has received an email saying that I've sent them some material on Dropbox. Well, I haven't. This is a hack. So, of course, this morning I've been concentrating on tightening up the security on not just my email, but pretty much every other part of social media that I use. This is good news, of course, because it means that somebody is rattled, and rightly so. And last night, the episode of Fracking Nightmare was perhaps, one of the most important for quite some time. My guests were Helen Chunso and Bob Dennett, who earlier in the day had served injunction papers on Cuadrilla. So obviously it has to go before the court. But Greg CLARKE, the Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, has been made aware. And basically, Cuadrilla have no excuse here. The injunction spells out the concerns around the lack of safety procedures. And this has been a project that has been driven by Helen Chunso. It's been going on for quite some time. Helen was very ably assisted by Benjamin Dean and others in the field who prefer to remain anonymous. And basically, what this research has established is that there are no coherent or cohesive emergency plans in place in the event of a major incident at the PNR well site. Basically, there are no evacuation plans in place. There's some 3,000 school children within a 3-mile radius of the well site. In the event of an emergency, the schools have no plans. They have no idea what to do. It would, of course, be panic. And this is the way the industry operates. It's a case of, well, nothing's going to go wrong, which is, of course, precisely what Kensington Borough Council stated about Grenfell Tower. And, when they elected to put non-fireproof panels on the outside of the building, the attitude was, well, we can save about £1.50 or whatever it was per panel. Because a fire's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to be a problem until it is. And on the basis that the track record of the unconventional gas industry in this country is atrocious, there have been so many incidents, mostly logged by the members of the public, because the various regulatory authorities just don't have the resources, even if they do have the expertise, which most of them don't. And, what we exposed last night on Fracking Nightmare was the lie of the gold standard regulation, because there are no specific regulations relating to the exploration and exploitation of unconventional hydrocarbons. It's simply a rollover of the regulations that are in place for the conventional industry. And, of course, conventional wells are not subjected to anything like the volume of liquids and the pressure of those liquids that are pumped down the well. So on the basis that Cuadrilla, of course, was the company that caused the moratorium to be put in place in the first instance back in 2011, because through their incompetence, they had fracked into a fault, a geological fault, and that effectively triggered some 90 plus seismic events that occurred in the field. The most significant of which were the ones on April 1st to May 27th of 2011. Of course, the moratorium was then lifted by David Cameron in December 2012. So here we are, nearly 6 years later. And although Third Energy were bragging this time last year that they were going to be the first company to frack in the UK, of course, the lies of Third Energy, and in particular John Dewar, the chief executive, were exposed. And of course, you know, the alarm bells should have been ringing even louder when, again, almost exactly a year ago, John Dewar announced his resignation from Third Energy. Of course, they were 2 months late with publishing their accounts. They're already a week late now. But everybody expected that because it's a cowboy outfit. And, you know, they are desperate to conceal the magnitude of the managerial incompetence. And, of course, 2 of the temporary directors that were put in place last year to try and blag that the company was sound, Keith Cochrane, formerly of Cuadrilla, and Lord Gadier, who is better known as a Tory financier, they have also now ditched a rapidly sinking ship. So Third Energy are certainly out of the picture for the, well, I think forever, basically. But Cuadrilla, bragging that they would now be the first company to frack in the UK. And, you know, they got the injunction in place. So they got all the support of the corporate courts to try and prevent the opposition and the dissent from the local community. But now, with much of the kit on site, the lies are exposed. It's clear for all to see. If you want to take a look at the chain for yourself, then simply go to the website whatdotheyknow.com. Whatdotheyknow, all one word, .com. And then in the search box, put Helen Chunso or Benjamin Dean. And you will see all the freedom of information requests that these 2 people have submitted over the previous, well, couple of years or so, some cases longer. And you will see the outrageous responses, particularly from Lancashire Fire Service and from the police. The fire service refusing to share their emergency response plans on the basis that it might put national security at threat. Are you kidding me? This is obfuscation. This is incompetence. You know, we are heading into a period of crass incompetence, primarily because the coming generation have not had the fundamental training. You know, nobody goes into a career anymore with the intention of, you know, becoming a specialist in that field. It's just like, you know, well, we'll scratch the surface and we'll blag the rest, which is why we're seeing so many, you know, bridges collapse around the world. We're seeing buildings, you know, collapse because the fundamental expertise just isn't there. And, you know, with the unconventional gas industry in this country, it is an Aberfan or, you know, a Grenfell Tower just waiting to happen. So, Greg Clark, you've tried to insulate yourself by, of course, pushing the Oil and Gas Authority forward. But, you know, everybody knows now that the Oil and Gas Authority is a private limited company of which you, Greg Clark, are the only shareholder. And you've pushed Claire Perry forward to put aggressive arguments for pushing this industry. But basically everybody can see through Claire Perry. She is an intellectual pygmy. She simply trots out the scripts given to her by her 20-something advisors unquestioningly. She wouldn't recognise a frack pad if it had it spelt out in massive letters across the entrance. So you cannot hide behind either the OGA or your Minister of State. It is your responsibility. You are accountable. And if anything goes wrong, which it would, if you allowed this to continue, your political career is in the toilet. You are literally skating around the rim of the bowl right now by even considering allowing these cowboys to potentially fire up their pump trucks. So it's no good trotting out the rhetoric saying, no, we're comfortable that, you know, everything's in place. These sociopathic liars are telling you what they think you want to hear, or they're telling you what they think you need to hear to butt out and just let them carry on. And, then obviously when it all messes up, then, what do we get? We get trotted out the old, tired palliatives of, oh dear, we made a mistake, lessons will be learned. But at what cost? So, the injunction is now with the court. The application for the injunction is with the courts. And the evidence is so compelling that if the courts refuse to hear the application for the injunction, then it will be yet further evidence that the country is in the grip of a corporatocracy with the judiciary firmly in their pockets. Because basically the judiciary, although they trot out the palliatives of, well, we've got to look at the balance between the interests of the corporations going about their lawful business and the rights of the public to peacefully protest under Articles 10 and 11, which they quickly emphasise are qualified rights. The reality is that the courts have removed those rights. There are no rights of protest in this country. There are no rights of dissent. And if you think that this is an exaggeration, you're just not paying attention. Over the past week or so, I've been, spelling out the outrageous comparison between the sentences awarded by Judge Alton to the 3 protesters who surfed the trucks last year at PNR and the cases of paedophilia that he's heard over recent years. And the case that I referred to last night on Fracking Nightmare is particularly outrageous, where I quoted some of Judge Robert Oldham's comments during the trial of a extreme paedophile who he sentenced to 15 months in jail, whereas he sentenced 3 peaceful protesters to 15 and 16 months in jail. So, the demonstration, obviously, that the judiciary are putting forward here is that extreme paedophilia is regarded in exactly the same way as peaceful protest. That should be a massive clue that the country is in the grip of rampant corporatocracy. Parliamentary democracy doesn't exist. It only exists as a charade. When Claire Perry was talking about the circus of protesters, basically she needs to get a mirror and look at the circus that is Westminster, which is simply a charade to placate the masses, to keep them in the naive belief that they actually live in a parliamentary democracy, when in reality we are living in a corporatist state where the corporations have the opportunity to do whatever they want to do thanks to a complicit judiciary. One day maybe we'll stumble across a judge that actually has a conscience. We'll stumble across a judge that actually has the best interests of humanity at heart, as opposed to simply protecting his next paycheck, protecting his next promotion by towing the corporatist line. It's pretty disgusting, really, isn't it? And, who have we got to blame for this? Well, primarily ourselves, because we have collectively simply stood back and allowed all this to happen. Well, obviously right now, some of the Tory MPs are starting to realise that their gravy train is being put at risk by this absurd attachment to a completely unnecessary unconventional hydrocarbons agenda. And Lee Rowley, the MP, the Tory MP for North East Yorkshire, is on point here. And he is spelling out to his Tory MP colleagues that, basically with barely a dozen or so applications to frack being submitted to local authorities, and, obviously these dozen or so applications have manifested a very significant reaction amongst the population of those areas. Yet, if they push ahead with this agenda, then they need many thousands of wells to be drilled across the north of England. So, as Lee Rowley says, the anti-fracking lion has not yet roared. Well, Helen Chunso is certainly roaring very loudly. And, she's done an amazing job with pulling all this research together. We're working with her legal team, culminating in the injunction application being submitted yesterday. So now the onus is very much on the people of the Fylde to not be distracted by the ineffectual circuses that are being led by certain individuals, but to focus on the real opposition here. It's get behind Helen, get behind Bob Dennett. Start calling your councillors, calling your MP, calling Lancashire Fire and Rescue Service, calling Lancashire Police, and asking them to share with you the evacuation plan and the emergency response plan, which they don't have. And consequently, this is pretty much like Greg Clarke standing beneath Grenfell Tower with a lighted match. Might as well, because Greg Clarke must be absolutely scared less that this is all going to go seriously south, and his ambitions as a politician could be over literally within a heartbeat, unless of course he does the right thing, which would take a very, very brave man. But it would take a man who uses his intellect to do the right thing for humanity, as opposed to prostitute himself to the corporations. So Cuadrilla thought they were going to frack by the end of the month. And if Cuadrilla, of course, have an ounce of conscience, then they will hold back pending the outcome of the injunction hearing. But knowing Cuadrilla, knowing the way the industry thinks, they will probably simply say, oh, well, until such time as the injunction is actually signed, we'll just carry on doing what we need to do. And in fact, we'll do it even quicker. And we'll just have to cut even more corners. The prognosis is not pretty. But how this unfolds from this point forward is very much up to us, and in particular, it's up to the residents who live in the sacrifice zone around Preston New Road. So game on. It's the end of the week. You have the time over the weekend. Take a look at the Freedom of Information requests. I'll put the link under this video. It's whatdotheyknow.com, and search for the requests that Helen Chunso and Benjamin Dean have submitted, and you can see the crass incompetence, the crass obfuscation, the lies, the deceit of the services that are supposedly there to help us, but they're losing their resources, they're losing their expertise, there's not enough hours in the day. So you know where this is heading. It's corporatocracy gone mad. Now, I'm not going to be back with you until Wednesday of next week, but on Thursday morning of next week, I shall be at Newcastle Crown Court supporting Mark Steele, who of course is challenging the injunction brought about by Gateshead Metropolitan Borough Council to try to prevent him from talking about 5G and LED streetlights and the impact that they are having on the residents of Gateshead. So I know some people have questioned whether Mark is accurate in his conjecture. Well, here's the opportunity to find out firsthand. So get along to Newcastle Crown Court next Thursday. That's Thursday, October the 11th, for a 10 o'clock start. And Mark says that the hearing is going to be explosive. So if you're in the northeast and you're at a loose end next Thursday, Newcastle Crown Court is the place to be. Thanks for joining me this week. Please do watch the episode of Fracking Nightmare from last night, and listen to what Helen and Bob have to say about the injunction that they have now served on Cuadrilla. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next Wednesday.